Good evening, everyone. And this is the Zoning Hearing Board of Susquehanna Township, and we'll come to order. As I usually say, and many of you look like familiar faces as we continue this hearing, but this is a quasi-judicial board. We accept evidence and hear sworn testimony. And at the end of the hearing, we will deliberate and issue our oral opinion. And our decisions are appealable to the Court of Common Pleas. And as many of you know, we have continued the hearings several times. This has been a long case. We will have public comment at the end of each side. And if you wish to speak, please fill out one of the forms that are outside on the podium where you signed in. We are anticipating that it's possible for us to finish the hearing portion of this, and so you may have the opportunity this evening to testify or comment if you so wish. With that, we can get started. Mr. Sir.
Good evening again. Charlie Sir, here on behalf of the applicant. We're here on redirect of our engineer, and I really just have 2 points that I'd like to go over to try to keep this relatively short. And Robbie, you're still under oath?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Did you have an opportunity to review the transcript from June 11th, 2019?
I did.
And I'm going to show you what's been, I'm going to show you a page on here where I think you want to make a correction. I'm on page 171 and 172 of the transcript. And you were asked a question about some photographs on cross-examination. And the answer said, but looking at those shadow lines and knowing how these operations of composting work, those loads were in-dumped to formulate a windrow. That was the correct. Do you recall saying that?
I do.
And after reviewing that, is there anything you'd like to correct in that statement?
Well, the spelling to be meaningful should be end dump, E-N-D-E, dash dump, D-U-M-P-E-D.
Because in-dumped isn't a word of anything.
Well, it's a different meaning.
Okay, so with end dump is the correct word.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Second thing I'd like to clarify, at the end of the hearing on June 11th, you testified concerning the whether it was about whether the school district was going to be involved in the operations here. And your answer on page 213 is as follows. My understanding, and this is hearsay, but working with the city staff, the arrangement with the school district is that the compost area for the school will be merged into the city's operations. Do you recall saying that?
I do, and there's...
Okay, let me ask you this. Now, after reflection and reviewing the transcript, that statement isn't correct, is it?
No.
And how so?
Well, there's been some additional discussions between the city and the Harrisburg School District, and the Harrisburg School District may be continuing their own compost operations. The offer was made to the school district to allow them to utilize the city's area for deposit of leaves and brush.
But the application that we have before the zoning hearing board is solely just for the city's leaves and brush, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I know there's a question of really kind of where this thing is. I mean, that's really the adjacent brush pile that the school district has, and we had a lot of testimony about. That's the brush pile that's really adjacent to the area that is subject to the application. Is that correct?
Yes, there's an area immediately to the west and contiguous with the city's leased or licensed the option property, as it's been referred to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have for clarification.
So that I understand, then we're talking about what's clearly the city proposing a whole separate second use, not an expansion of anything the school district allegedly is doing.
Objection, that's a legal conclusion whether it's a second use.
I'll
Just
sus-
clarify.
I'll sustain the objection.
Let me see if I can get it a different way, because I think I thought I heard you say the school district was potentially doing its own use of something with its leaves, separate from whatever the city would be doing, not merging it together.
Well, the offer has been made, but my understanding is that the city may continue to utilize the area that they currently are utilizing,
When you say the city, you mean the school district?
the school district.
And this is not really what you testified. We actually just received some information from the city on our right-to-know request. So if you would indulge me, I'd like to just ask a couple questions on some of the information we just received. You were involved, though, in the first application that was subsequently withdrawn that would have had food waste included in it, correct?
I was involved with that application, yes.
And how much food in terms of trucks per week or per day was envisioned to go to that composting facility under that first
I object to
version?
that. First of all,
Sustained.
it's not relevant to what we're talking about.
It's relevant because it goes to, among other things, projections of how many trucks.
But food waste is no longer part of this.
Precisely. However, the first application had food waste and also this entire thing, so I want to try to understand the difference between the two in terms of the trucks.
Well, if you could get there quickly,
Okay.
I'll allow it.
How many trucks of food waste would have gone to this facility if the first application had gone to fruition?
I don't know that I can fully define that. The only school that was really under consideration at the time of the other compost application to DEP was the Hamilton School. And I guess the direct response to your question is about 1 cubic yard a day.
Okay. And then the leaf and woody waste component of that, has that, what was envisioned under the first application, has that changed between the first application and this application? The volume of what you're expecting to process?
For the city,
Yes.
it's the same.
I'd like to have marked as, I think we're at Exhibit 13. And marked as Township Exhibit 13. This is, what I understand is the DEP application fact sheet from that prior application that has the estimated truck volume per day. I think we're at Township Exhibit 13, correct? Madam Meyer, I'm going to hand you, it was just been marked as Township Exhibit number 13. You could take a look at it and tell me, are you familiar with this? And in fact, is this something you would have had a hand in providing information for?
This is something that that DEP prepared,
Okay, let me
and it
draw
looks
your
like
attention.
some of the information is generic to composting.
Okay, let me draw your attention specifically to the third paragraph. It's about the fifth line from the bottom where it says it is estimated that approximately 25 to 30 truckloads of yard waste and organics will enter the site daily. That's supposedly during the peak season. Did DEP get that information from you?
I don't recall whether or not it's probably in that application, but this is a different application. And I don't recall the number of trucks in the previous application.
I'd move for the admission of Township Exhibit number 15.
Without objection, it's approved.
I have no further questions.
No further questions.
Do the board members have questions?
I have a question, please. You stated that, I guess there was an offer made to the school district to merge the two sites, or for the school district to use the city's proposed composting site. Were those discussions made before or after the state took over the school district? And based on that change in control, might that change?
Well, let's break down your question. So when we say merge, basically the city offered to the school district to accommodate the leaves and brush into the city's compost area. And that would allow the school district to abandon or to otherwise clean up their site and have it operated in the manner that DEP would like to have larger facilities operated. As I've indicated in previous testimony, if it were my client, they're not required to have a permit. They're deemed to be a qualified site as a captive facility. And those discussions all occurred prior to the state takeover of the school district. And I can't answer the latter part of your question, is whether or not those conversations or the offer is going to be continued in the discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions? No further questions, Mr. Hasselmeyer. Thank you very much.
You have no further witnesses.
Okay. Mr. Diamond, whenever you're ready to proceed.
Yes, for our first witness, I'd like to call Mike Rohr, the zoning officer.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mike, can you please state your name and your position?
Michael Rohr. I'm the Planning and Zoning Officer for Susquehanna Township, and I have been since October of 2005.
And as part of your duties, do you enforce the zoning ordinance?
I do.
And are you the custodian of the zoning and land development records?
I am.
And are you involved with and familiar with amendments to the zoning ordinance?
I am.
And for the record, have you sat through all the hearings in this case so far?
I have.
I'd like to have marked as Township Exhibit number 14. This is a zoning amendment from 2019. As well as the legal advertisements for its adoption. Mr. Rohr, are you familiar with what's just marked as Township Exhibit number 14?
I am. It's Ordinance 1902.
And in addition to the ordinance, is there also the proof of advertisement and the notice of advertisement?
Yes, there is.
And when was this ordinance amendment first advertised and made available to the public?
It was advertised, duly advertised, initially Tuesday, March 19th, 2019, and then also Tuesday, March 26th, 2019.
And was that prior to when the current pending application was filed?
Yes.
Now, the actual adoption of that, did that occur after the application was filed?
Yes.
And this ordinance, does it have any provisions, and if so, can you direct us to them, relating to the expansion of non-conforming uses?
Yes, that would be in section 10 of this ordinance. Specifically, section 10, 2B.
And 10.2B, does that place any limitations on expansion? Any new limitations?
25% is the maximum expansion.
And is that for land as well as building?
Buildings, structures, and/or land, yes.
And prior to this amendment, or if this amendment doesn't apply in this case, is there any restriction that applies to an expansion of non-conforming use inside of a building?
Yes.
And what is that percentage?
I believe that's also 25%.
We'll come back. I move for the admission of Township Exhibit number 14.
So admitted.
And does the Township Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance have a definition of land development?
It does.
Have marked as Township Exhibit number 15. It's just an excerpt of the definition of land development from the Saldo. And Mr. Rohr, are you familiar with this definition?
I am.
And that definition, does it require a land development application solely for an approval of an expansion of a non-conforming use in and of itself?
No.
Now, are you familiar with the subject property that is referred to as 1901 Wayne Avenue, and also in this case has been referred to by the applicant as 1850 Stanley?
I am.
And what district is that in?
Conservation District?
And was that in that, how long has it been in that district?
30, 40 years?
So it was in that district as of 2003?
Absolutely.
And in 1971, was it in a country residential district?
I believe it was, yes.
And you're familiar with, you've been to the property?
I have.
And are you familiar with the neighborhoods around the property?
I am.
Actually, I'd like to have two exhibits marked, which I think were on the 15 and 16? 16, 17. And one is just the assessment card information from the county assessor's office, and the other is some photographs of the property from the Stanley Street. have as, is the first one would be the assessment record. These are photographs from Stanley. And they were taken in December, actually the first week. And Mr. Rohr, do you look at the assessment records on properties when you're analyzing them?
We do.
And are you familiar with this assessment record, which has just been marked as 16 as the assessment record for the property we're talking about?
I am.
Move for the admission of exhibit number 16. And draw your attention now to the photographs that are exhibit number 17. Have you had an opportunity to look at those?
I have, yes.
Do you recognize those, what's in those photographs?
Yes.
And is that a true and accurate depiction of the subject property and specifically the old farmhouse building that's referred to in the testimony in this case?
It's an accurate description.
And from the, this is in December when there is obviously little, small amount of leaves and vines and things, but are you able to see behind the building from the public, or from Stanley?
I'm not, no.
Move for the admission of exhibit number 17.
So admitted.
Were you personally, as the zoning officer since 2005, or are you aware of any records of the township, that the township was aware of any composting or even a piling of leaves on the subject property prior to when this case came up?
We have no record of any use.
Is there any certificate of occupancy or use for the subject property to be used as a composting facility?
There's none.
Does the township have a procedure under which owners are able to register non-conforming uses if they wish?
We do, yes.
Was there any non-conforming use registered for this property?
There was not.
I'd like to have marked as exhibit number 18. This is really more for reference. It's excerpts of the current zoning ordinance. And Mr. Rohr, is there in this, in the current zoning ordinance, is there a definition of a waste disposal and processing facility?
Yes, there is.
And is that in section 27-204 in alphabetical order,
Correct, on page 38.
on page 38? And does that definition include specifically composting facilities?
Yes.
And again, is a composting facility generally a permitted use in the Conservation District?
It is not.
Is manufacturing permitted in the Conservation District?
It is not.
Does the ordinance of the township have any supplementary regulations like special setbacks and things like that for waste disposal or processing facilities?
It does, yes.
And are they in section 27-2031?
That's correct, yes.
Incidentally, are schools currently permitted in the Conservation District?
No.
Does the current ordinance define municipalities or municipal facilities?
It does.
And what section is that in? That also in 27?
Same section, yes, 27-204,
Okay.
page 26.
And would the Harrisburg School District be a municipality that could have a municipal facility under the current ordinance?
No,
How about the city of Harrisburg?
no.
Does the zoning ordinance provide for any rules of how to interpret a word if it's not expressly stated in that section 204?
It does, the Webster's Dictionary.
Marked as, I believe we're at 19, correct? These are excerpts of the zoning ordinance as of prior to 2003. Mr. Rohr, did the prior zoning ordinance, going back in time, have any provisions about how to interpret a word or a term that is not expressly defined in the specific definition section?
I believe it also used Webster's Dictionary.
You know what section that is? Actually, I'll draw your attention to section 203 on page, what appears 435.
Webster's Abridged Dictionary.
I'd like to have marked as Township Exhibit number 20. This is actually a combination, it has an A, B, and C component to it. A is the applicable from at the time Webster's Dictionary definition. Also for reference is the municipality's planning code definition of municipality and the Statutory Construction Act's definition of municipality. And also, while I'm handing these out, to draw the board's attention respectfully to the DEP regulations that we previously submitted that also have the definition of municipality consistent with all these definitions. Mr. Rohr, does the Webster's Dictionary definition have a definition of municipality? And if so, does it look like it includes a school district?
The definition is there, and it does not include a school district.
think the statutory provisions speak for themselves, but I move for the admission of Township Exhibit Number 20.
So admitted.
And are you familiar with Stanley Road, I guess, in
I am.
front of it? And is that a private street?
It is a private street.
And does the Township Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance have any definition for an arterial street?
We do, yes.
Just like to have marked as Exhibit 21, and this is just an excerpt of the Saldo definition of arterial street. And Mr. Rohr, while I'm handing that out, does the township consider Stanley Road to be an arterial street?
No, it does not.
And the proposed option area, does that border directly to an arterial street?
No.
Move for the admission of Exhibit 21. Oh, did I hand you the wrong one? I'm sorry. I actually handed the wrong exhibit out. So I'm going to actually come to that exhibit next. So why don't we leave that marked as 20? And that is
It's 21.
I'm sorry, 21. Did everyone end up with the photo? Okay. I don't know if I have enough copies of this. Unfortunately, I only have 2 copies of the Saldo definition here. Let me have one officially marked here. I'm sorry, this is the wrong one also. In fact, I'll tell you what, I will not make an exhibit of that. Let me just ask you, are you familiar with the definition of the Saldo arterial street? And does Stanley meet that definition?
I'm familiar with the definition. It does not meet that definition.
Okay. Now, I've already handed out, and I mischaracterized what it was as Exhibit Number 20, and that is the GIS aerial view of the property.
It's 21.
It's
And-
21, Mr. Diamond.
Excuse me?
It's exhibit number 21.
Oh, 21, okay, 21. Now, 21, and if you orient it like this is north. Are you familiar with the neighborhood to the north of the property?
Yes, that would be Edgemont.
And can you describe that neighborhood for the record?
It's an R2 zone, primarily single-family homes.
And the actual tax parcel site, how close does that come to that neighborhood?
Right up against it.
Now, if I draw you back to the current zoning ordinance, and I'd like to draw your attention to section 2613, and that's some of the requirements for all types of special exceptions. Let me know when you have that in front of you.
Okay.
Referencing exhibit 18.
Yes. Now, one of the, and I'll draw your attention specifically to number 1 under that about the whether the location, including with respect to the streets, is in harmony with the orderly and appropriate development of the district. And can you give us your opinion on that as the zoning
No, I would
officer?
say it's not.
And number 2, the nature and intensity of the operations involved, based on what you heard as the description of the intensity and the nature of the proposed composting facility, do you have an opinion on whether those would be in harmony with the orderly development of the district?
I don't believe they could meet that section.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I don't believe they could meet that section of the ordinance.
And number 3, with respect to traffic, factoring in the 25 trucks per day in the peak season, do you have an opinion on whether that would have an impact on the streets?
Yeah,
in the
that
area?
would certainly increase the traffic, which would also not be permitted.
And turning to number 4, where it talks about specific requirements, we're going to get to later some of the requirements in terms of setbacks and those things, but we'll skip over that for now. Actually, I want to draw your attention to, we talked earlier about the amendment to section 27-2204, but I'd like you now to focus your attention on the pre-amended version of that.
Where is that, Mr. Diamond?
Sorry, that the non-conforming use expansion in 27-2204. That is on pages 207, 208, and 209.
Exhibit 18? Is that what you're...
So, yes, yeah, and that's the current.
For an ordinance?
Yes. And in that section, there's a .2 sub C. Does that also refer to meeting additional supplementary regulations, et cetera, and setbacks? And
Lot building setback coverage, et cetera, yes.
And then in sub D, that same part, is that the reference you were talking about earlier about the 25% of the
Shall not exceed
gross
an
floor
increase
area?
of 25%, yes.
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Shall not exceed an increase of 25% of gross floor area.
In connection with the current application, would the inclusion of a proposed building, or in this case, 2 proposed buildings as an integral part of the composting use, make the proposal fail to meet that section of the current zoning ordinance?
It would.
Now, I'd like to draw your attention to section 27-2031, which has some kind of supplementary standards and requirements for solid waste disposal and processing facilities. I mean, that's again in that exhibit 18. On pages 144, 145.
Right.
And I'd like to draw your attention specifically to sub 2, where it has a minimum lot area. And what's the minimum lot area there?
Must be a minimum lot area of 25 acres.
Okay. Now, it's been a little unclear to me what this option area is, whether it's really anything distinct or not, and maybe it isn't, but if the option area were taken into account as some sort of entity for measuring this, would that meet that standard?
I don't believe it would.
And then direct your attention right under that to paragraph 3. Does that have any setback indicated from property lines?
Shall not be within 500 feet of any street or property line.
Now, number 4, does that refer to any requirements regarding arterial roadways?
It must have direct access to an arterial roadway.
And then I'll direct your attention to paragraph 5 regarding adverse effects upon any surrounding residential properties. Do you have any opinions on that?
I would think it would due to the traffic and the noise and potential odors.
How about bugs?
Bugs, mosquitoes, yeah.
Did the township receive from the applicant any sort of litter control plan in connection with the application?
We did not.
Did the township receive any sort of raw water needs analysis from either private or public sources with the application?
No, we didn't.
Did the application provide for screening from view of the processing area from the property line?
No, we saw no screening plan.
And does the township, when it's looking at processing, manufacturing, things like those kind of operations, look at what are called SIC codes to see if there's some sort of SIC code for them?
We do, yes.
I think we're on 22. I have that right. I'm going to have marked as 22. It's just an SIC code for mulch manufacturing. Mr. Rohr, you heard the testimony put on by the applicant about producing a finished mulch at the subject property. Now, you have in front of you the exhibit number 22. Is that the SIC code for
It is.
mulch manufacturing?
It is.
And in your view, is the mulch production aspect permitted in the conservation district?
It's not.
I move for the admission of exhibit number 22.
Mr. Diamond, what is the abbreviations that you're referencing?
Ah, boy, that's in the ordinance. Let me see here.
SIC?
There. Get my ordinance out and find where oh, the standard industrial classification, SIC.
I just have an objection to this. It doesn't appear to be relevant because it appears to apply to retail nurseries, lawn and garden supply stores, and farm supply stores. So I object to this on relevancy. I looked at primary SIC code and primary NAICS code.
And Mr. Diamond, sorry, I still didn't hear what SIC is.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just,
Oh, sorry.
standard industrial classification
Oh,
code.
thank you.
Oh, and the NAICS, so that's the North American Industry Classification System. It's the NAICS.
Mr. Diamond, could you explain further how it is relevant?
Well, we believe that the production of the finished mulch is actually a production manufacturing operation. Nothing that anyone claims, even under the alleged version of whatever the school district was doing, was ever a possibility. And this is a real manufacturing, a production activity that's not permitted in the zone. We just want to be clear that's what it is.
I'll sustain the objection to the exhibit.
I'd like to have marked, and this is really just to make the record. This is, I believe we're 23, right? This is this board's decision and the Court of Common Pleas and the Commonwealth Court decision, what we think is a very controlled case, the Harrisburg Gardens versus Susquehanna Township case, last cases. Interprets this very section of the ordinance.
What exhibit number is
This
this?
is 23. And Mr. Rohr, are you familiar with this case, its origins, and what happened with the case?
I am.
And was that interpreting this expansion of non-conforming use section of the ordinance prior to the 2019 amendment?
It was.
Since it's law, I don't know that we need to move for the admission of it. It's really more for reference, but referring to that in our arguments. One other thing for the completeness of the record, I'd have marked as 24. This is just this honorable board's decision in the first round of this case, dismissing the first case for lack of standing. And then the copies here. I don't know if you need one.
What's that?
That's just the first decision in the first case.
No, I have not.
I have no further questions of the zoning officer.
Michael? Exhibit number township 20. That's the definitions that we kind of provided here. Would the city of Harrisburg qualify as a municipality underneath the definitions set forth in Webster's dictionary?
Sorry, Charlie, I don't have.
Oh,
They're all
okay.
out of order. Charlie, that's defined as a city town having its own incorporated government.
So the city of Harrisburg would qualify as a municipality in the dictionary. But if you flip down to the NPC definition, the city of Harrisburg, again, would qualify as a municipality under the NPC.
Correct.
And the statutory, so underneath the NPC, city of Harrisburg is a municipality as defined, correct? Now let's go to the exhibit T18, which is the current zoning. Ordinance, and specifically the, look at the definition of waste disposal and processing facility. Was it your testimony that the proposed use qualified as a waste disposal or processing facility?
That's correct.
I'd like to look at that definition, and I'd like you to read the first sentence of that definition.
Land, structures, and other apparatus or improvements where municipal or residual waste disposal or processing is permitted or takes place, or hazardous waste is treated, stored, or disposed.
So that's really the definition of waste disposal, but after that, there's examples of what would constitute.
No objection to that,
facility.
speaks for itself. It's a whole definition.
Okay.
It's not that one sentence, and it refers specifically to the Title 25 and to composting facilities by name.
Would you like to rephrase your question?
Sure. To qualify as a waste disposal or processing facility, under the first sentence, you have to have municipal or residual waste disposal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Or municipal or residual waste processing, correct?
Correct.
Or hazardous waste being treated, stored, or disposed.
Also correct.
Now, if we go further down in the definition, we flip the page, I see definition of hazardous material, hazardous waste, municipal waste, and residual waste, correct?
Correct.
If we look at the first two dealing with hazardous, has there been any testimony that you've heard that the leaves would qualify as a hazardous material or hazardous waste?
I don't think so.
No. Now let's go to the definition of municipal waste. That's a defined term within the definition of waste disposal or processing facility, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'd like you to read that definition yourself. And I'd like you to explain where does leaves and trees fit within the definition of municipal waste.
They're not referenced in the definition.
Okay. So let's go to the definition of residual waste. The same question. Do leaves and branches qualify underneath anything contained within that sub-definition of residual waste?
They're also not referenced.
Let's stay within that same exhibit, 18, and we'll look at the permitted uses within the conservation district. So that's section 27-402. sub 5 permits municipal, county, state, and federal buildings and facilities, correct?
Correct.
So that would be a permitted use within that district. Right.
Yes.
So if Susquehanna Township wanted to put in a municipal facility, they could do that within this district, correct?
That's correct.
And there would be no zoning approval necessary, just to get that threshold question that they would qualify as that use.
Well, they would need, obviously, permission to take the appropriate steps, but it's a permitted use.
Right, they'd have to go through 27-2038. That's referencing it, correct? But the city of Harrisburg does not qualify underneath that section, correct? So if Susquehanna Township wanted to process leaves on this property, would there be an application to the zoning hearing board required?
Most likely, yes.
You would. And why would that be?
Well, it's not a building or facility, so you have to approach it here.
So if they operated a composting facility, let's call it, and I'm using the same word, but the same use that's been testified so far. If it was Susquehanna Township doing this, collecting leaves from the township, making mulch through a mechanized process, that would, in your opinion, that would not qualify as a municipal facility?
Can you define facility? How are you using it?
No, I mean, I'm just asking you, you're the zoning officer, would it qualify as a municipal facility?
I have to see how you define facility.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be permitted in the definition.
It would be permitted then?
Facility.
Just one moment. That's all I have. Thank you. Nothing further.
Board members have questions? Yeah, just one question. Let me find it. Mr. Roy, I don't see the exact words that you used, but you were asked if the township receives notice of non-conforming uses.
Right. We don't receive any requests or any applications.
I'm not familiar.
To establish a non-conforming use.
Would residents sometimes give notice to the township?
Yes.
Oh, is that,
Certificate of non-conformity.
okay, thank you.
A register of all the non-conforming buildings and structures in the township.
You may find the section in there. In the non-conforming.
Documentation of the non-conformance is section 2205 of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I'll look at that. One more question.
I just want to be real clear in the last line of questioning from Mr. Kerr. So if the county or the state or Susquehanna Township wanted to create a compost facility on this property, it would be a permitted use.
That's how it's defined, yes.
But since the city is not included in the ordinance's definition of municipality, it's not permitted because of the applicant. I wanted to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orr.
For our second witness, I'd like to call Mr. Nate Spriggs from the Public Works Department.
Would you raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And Nate, could you please state your full name, your address, and your position with the township?
Nathaniel Spriggs, Public Works Director for Susquehanna Township. My address is 1524 Meadowlark Way in Susquehanna Township.
And do your responsibilities as the Director of Public Works include overseeing the township's leaf or woody waste collection disposal facilities?
Yes, sir.
And are you familiar with any township composting facility near Edgewood Park?
No, sir. Just no, sir.
Okay. And is there any temporary leaf storage area near Edgewood Park?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And what goes on at that facility?
It's just a holding area for our leaf collection and our woody waste.
I'd like to have marked, as I think we're on exhibit number 25. This is just the copy of the permit by rule application. Do you have a copy of this? There's been testimony by the applicant about this
Is this an exhibit?
facility. Yes, this is exhibit number 25. Does not have a cover on it.
Mr. Briggs, would you
Spriggs.
mind? I'm sorry, what is it?
Spriggs, S-P-R-I-G-G-S.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Spriggs, would you mind having a seat at the end here?
Sure.
I think the rest of the room would like to see you as you testify.
Sure.
Is it 24?
25, isn't it? Is it 24?
25.
Oh, it was a decision.
Yeah. And is this a true and correct copy of the township's application for the current permit?
Yes.
And does it indicate in there whether there would be any active processing or exactly what the nature of the activity would be?
Well, processing is not permitted.
And does it expressly draw your attention to page 8, paragraph 3? Does it indicate whether this is only for temporary storage?
It does.
And to be clear, is there any grinding that goes on there?
No.
Is there any watering of the leaves?
No.
Is there any manufacturing of finished mulch there?
No, sir.
So when it's put there, tell me why it goes there and where it's going to from there.
Well, it's a storage site, and we utilize that to save time when we're collecting leaves, save fuel. So we store it there for a period of time, and then at some point during the year, we haul it out to Dig My Earth, which is the composting facility here in the township.
Okay, and that facility, and that's Dig, D-I-G, My, M-Y, Earth?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Is that a privately owned facility?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, yes.
And does the township contract with that facility to do its
That's
active
correct.
composting?
That's correct.
And where's that located?
It's on Front Street. I don't have the exact address, but it's on Front Street here in Susquehanna Township.
I move for the admission of Township Exhibit number 25. I don't have any further questions.
No objection.
So admitted.
You done?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, so that I got the right, heard the right answer. How long do the leaves stay at this site?
We haul them out periodically. So we haul them out at the end of the leaf season. So possibly no more than about 90 days once we store them there, roughly. That usually depends on what type of season we're having.
And does the public store stuff there, drop off leaves, or is it all done by the township?
It's all done by the township.
Can the public pick up leaves there, or is it open for public to come up and pick up?
No one's supposed to be in there but township employees.
And then again, where did they go after they were temporarily stored there? You referenced some other place on?
Dig My Earth.
I'm sorry.
Dig My Earth. DIGMYEARTH.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? No further questions, thank you.
I do have a quick question here. This form, I'm sorry, I've got so many exhibits I'm losing. Yard waste composting facility application form, which was initially filed in the 2009? Well, that's the cover letter, but on the bottom in here it says January 6, 2009, page 10. I don't know, but the date is, but and perhaps you're not the right person to ask this question to, but when was the township required to file this application with DEP?
I'm sure they were, but I didn't file it personally.
Yeah, it's been on record for a while.
It's been on record.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So for our next witness, let's have the codes officer for a question or two, and it's Joe Bailey.
I'm sorry, what was his last name?
This is by VAJEA.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Joe, can you please state your name, address, and your position with the township?
Joseph Vita. I live at 1825 Pebble Court, Susquehanna Township. My position is building code official.
And your responsibilities include enforcing the property maintenance code and things like that?
That is correct.
And are you familiar, do you go around the township looking for compliance issues?
That is part of my job, yes.
And are you familiar with the subject property we've been talking about, the Harrisburg School District property that's officially 1901 Wayne Avenue?
I am.
And have you had to go there to deal with complaints?
Yes, I have.
And how long have you been doing the job as codes officer?
In the township? I've been here since April of 2015.
And you say you live in the township?
That is correct.
Were you familiar with that area before you became the codes officer?
Yes, I was.
Were you aware of any active composting facility at that property?
I have not.
That marked as exhibit number 26. Actually, let me have this marked. This is just a unlawful dumping notice of violation. Township exhibit number 26. did you issue any notices of violation for this specific property relative to unlawful dumping at that site?
Yes.
And can you look at what has been marked as exhibit number 26? Are you familiar with these records?
Yes.
And can you tell us what they are?
Well, the first page is a notice, which is a recent notice this year that was mailed out to the school district regarding a code violation of overgrown vegetation, grass and weeds on this 1901 Wayne Avenue. And that notice indicated to obviously cut, trim, and remove that vegetation. And I indicated it was along Stanley Drive, fenced areas and inside the fenced areas.
And have you, prior to that, issued other notices of violation or had to deal with the school district for dumping issues?
Yes, I did. I believe, yes, further in this exhibit, towards the back, there's another notice of violation that's dated July 19th of 2017, which I had received a complaint of dumping of junk items on this property.
And did the school district appeal any of those notices?
They did not.
And marked as exhibit 27, these are just the photographs. I'd like you to take a look at these and tell me if you're familiar with these photographs and whether they came from your record. Are you familiar with these?
I am. I did take these pictures.
And approximately when?
This would have been July 17th of 2017.
And did the school district, to your knowledge, take some steps to clean up some of this?
They did. It took a while, but they did do that.
I have no further questions.
Just a question on T27, the photographs, the second from the end. You see this one here?
Yes, I have.
It appears to be like a pile of wooden debris.
Correct. It would.
Behind that, is that the organic, the leaves, like tree limbs and stuff like that behind there?
I believe it's tree limbs and debris. I don't know if it's leaves from the
Okay.
picture. I don't remember, but
Yeah,
It's
that's where
brush.
Organic debris, correct.
yes.
When you went and took photographs, you're really dealing with the, I would call it the junk. There's wooden debris. On the first paragraph, there's some sort of tanks. I'm not quite sure what those are.
Yes, they are actual metal trash cans.
Okay. That's all, thank you.
Just follow up on that. So the organic material was just referenced. What part of the property were they on? Were they on the Wayne Avenue side or behind the old farmhouse?
This would be behind the old farmhouse.
And did the school district advise you they were cleaning everything up?
They did. I did have to contact the school district by phone as well as email to follow up. Again, it took a while for that to happen, but it did clean up, or they did clean it up substantially.
I have no further questions.
Good evening. Can you tell me, I understand you've been with the township for, what, 4 years?
Yes.
Was there any record of any citations or any contact with the school district prior to this one in July of 2017?
No, there was no township records that I could find.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you.
I'd like to call a member of the public, Mr. Stanley Lawson, who actually made some public comment in his first case. Ask him just very few questions.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give be the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth? Would you spell your last name for me?
Lawson.
And Mr. Lawson, you live in Susquehanna Township?
That's correct.
And how long have you lived in Susquehanna Township?
Mr.
30
Diamond
years.
and Mr. Lawson, pardon me, would you mind having a seat here? I think this is a little unconventional, but I think the members of the public would appreciate seeing
Sitting there
you.
at the public, you can't hear anybody anyway.
Oh.
Can't hear you hardly out there.
Oh, well, please, everybody, use your microphones closely. Mr. Lawson, see if yours is on. Your microphone is on.
I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Yes. Excuse me, another thing. Can we turn the air down a little bit? It's awful cold in here.
We'll see what we can do about that, Mr. Diamond.
Mr. Lawson, how long have you lived in the township?
Over 30 years.
And are you familiar with the subject property we've been talking about?
I am.
Have you sat through all these hearings?
Yes.
And in fact, did you have any position with the township, any official position with the township in your life?
Yes, I served as a member of the Board of Commissioners for over 20 years and also as president of Susquehanna Township.
And incidentally, did you serve any position with the city of Harrisburg?
Yes, I did. I served as vice president of Harrisburg City Council.
And how about with the school district?
Yes, I did. I was director of security for the Harrisburg School District and worked at the middle school, which this property is located. It's no longer there, tore it down.
And over the years, have you remained familiar with that property and at Stanley Road
You call it Stanley Road, I think it's Stanley Drive.
or Stanley Drive?
And the reason why I know that, it was named after me.
So in any event, over what period of time have you been familiar with that property?
Over 30 years. And even before that, my family lived in, before I moved there, I had family that lived there on Columbia Avenue, and I used to go out there for picnics and also on Clayton Avenue, many family members.
And all I want to know is, were you aware prior to this zoning issue coming up of any leaf operation going on at that property?
No, actually, I worked at the middle school, and I never knew anything being held there of any kind of compost or anything,
How
no.
about in recent years?
No.
I have no further questions.
I have no questions.
Just a moment. Does the board have any questions?
I'm sorry?
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe take a recess. I only have one witness left, it'll be the engineer.
Okay, why don't we take a 15-minute break?
10 minutes will do.
Not that we're anxious. Well, 10 minutes do, Mr.
Yeah.
Diamond. Let's do 10 minutes, be back at 7:40. Board will come to order. Mr. Diamond, you may proceed.
Okay, we'd like to call our final witness, which is Engineer Ben Burns from the HRG engineering firm, which is the township engineer.
Yeah, please use your microphone as close as you can, and we apologize if you weren't able to hear everything earlier.
Do you swear affirm the testimony about to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Burns, would you please state your office address and the company for whom you're employed?
I'm employed with Herbert Rowland and Grubik, commonly known as HRG Engineering. Office address is 474 Windmere Drive, State College, Pennsylvania.
And I have here your CV. You have this marked as student 28. And are you an engineer?
That is correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I have a bachelor's degree in biology from Gettysburg College, master's degree in environmental pollution control from Penn State University, and I am a licensed professional engineer in Maryland.
And are you part of the HRG firm that is the township engineers?
That is correct.
And have you sat through all of the hearings in this case?
I believe I was not present for the first hearing, but since December on, I have been present at all of the hearings.
And does your background include waste disposal and processing facilities, including the yard waste composting facilities?
That is correct.
And can you tell us a little bit about that?
I've worked with many municipalities dealing with yard waste composting, both in forms of composting solely, but more so in composting in conjunction with other types of waste, food waste, biosolids, that sort of thing.
And we offer Mr. Burns as an expert, an engineer with a background that includes composting and yield for more deer.
Just a couple questions. Mr. Burns, you're not a PE in Pennsylvania, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you don't have an engineering degree, is that correct?
That is correct.
I would object as an expert engineer, not being licensed in Pennsylvania. He certainly has significant background in wastewater treatment plant and various waste things here, but not as an expert engineer.
May I just ask you to point out in your resume the various composting facilities that you've worked on? Because I'm not seeing it. Like, mostly it seems it's sanitary, sewer, and wastewater.
Sure. So the first item there, odor control system upgrades for the University Area Joint Authority. That's an odor control system upgrade associated with a composting facility that co-composts biosolids and organic material.
Like sludge.
Sludge, correct. They receive organic material from the community at their site. They process it on site through chipping, and then they blend it with wastewater sludge and compost it.
Are there others in here?
There are not others in there, but I have worked extensively with UAJ over the years in developing the blend ratios for processing and accepting that wood waste material.
You worked with what, the initials? I'm not,
University Area Joint Authority.
oh, okay. Thank you very much.
And where is that university? Is it-
It's located in State College, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Diamond, would you tell us how you are proffering him again?
Well, we would proffer him as an engineer. He's not sealing plans or anything in Pennsylvania. But at least alternatively, as an expert with composting and environmental pollution control background.
Do you wish to say anything further, Mr. Sir?
I would not have an objection, expert in environmental pollution control, because he certainly has a degree in that, his master's degree. I don't have an objection to that. I still remain as to engineering and also as to composting. I don't see anything here related to what we've been discussing.
Well, I will allow him to be admitted as an expert engineer. He is licensed in the state of Maryland, so let's have him admitted as an engineer.
And Mr. Burns, did you have an opportunity to actually visit the subject property?
I did. I visited the property in December.
And we're going to refer to some exhibits that were already admitted. I also have an additional one I'd like to have marked, and this is some DEP composting guidelines. I believe this would be 29 if I have the number straight here. And I'll also I'll be referring to some of the guidance materials and DEP regulations. I'll refer to those already admitted exhibits as we get to those. Mr. Burns, are you familiar with this particular document?
Yes, I am.
And is this guidance from the Pennsylvania DEP?
That is correct. This is guidance from DEP for yard waste composting facilities.
And does this give any information or background about the concept of a permit by rule?
Yes, it does. It establishes a requirement for permit by rule, and it also contains a specific document that is to be used as a permit by rule yard waste composting application form.
And if the school district in the past had been properly running some sort of leaf pile facility as specified, would that have to have had at least a permit by rule from DEP?
That is correct.
And this exhibit, does it actually show the form that has to be submitted, has to be filed for a permit by rule?
That is correct. For the composting permit by rule, there actually is a registration of the facility, and that would include a submission of the application form.
Does that begin at page 8 on that document?
Yes, it does.
And are there various pieces of information and requirements that have to be submitted with it? Are they detailed in there?
That is correct. It covers the operator, name of facility, proposed method of composting, proposed operational scenarios for composting, proposed material to be received, volumes of material to be received, that sort of thing.
I'd move for the admission of Township Exhibit number, I believe that's 29.
No objection.
So admitted.
I'd like to draw your attention to a previously admitted exhibit. I believe you have that handy there, and that would be exhibit number 11, Township Exhibit number 11. If everyone knows to find that. That is the DEP regulations at chapter 271, 25 PA. And are you familiar with those regulations in DEP, I'm sorry, 20 PA code? No, 25 PA code, chapter 271.
Yes, I am.
And does that contain a definition of composting?
Yes, it does.
Does that envision an active management with some sort of control process?
That is correct.
And does this also, these regulations get into permitting and other requirements in order to have a lawful yard waste composting facility?
That is correct.
I'd like to draw your attention to, I believe it's 271-103. It says permit by rule. And in order to have a permit by rule under that section, are there certain operational requirements that facilities have to follow in addition to filing that application?
Yes, there are.
Can you tell some of those?
Yes, the facility would need to monitor the amount of material being received at the facility, basically recording the amount of material received, as well as taking some other monitoring procedures of the composting operation.
Does it have to have some sort of preparedness plan, contingency plan?
Yeah, it's a preparedness, prevention, and contingency plan, commonly referred to as a PPC plan. It's a general plan that identifies what the facility is performing, any types of materials they may have on site, and generally provides for contingencies to resolving any issues associated with potential environmental contamination, noise contamination, odor contamination, those sort of things.
And from the testimony you observed, it sounded like the school district had followed any of those kinds of operational requirements?
No, it does not.
Okay, I'd like to draw your attention to what was previously admitted as Township Exhibit number 10. That was the DEP reference manual from Cumberland County Municipal Yard Waste. Are you familiar with that document?
Yes, I am.
And is that considered to be an accurate resource by DEP?
It is. I believe it is available through a DEP website.
And do you find it to be an accurate description of the process and the issues for a composting facility?
Yes, I do.
Now, you've heard the testimony about the proposed facility here. Are there any potential issues that you see that could arise from that sort of operation?
Yes, composting operations inherently employ the decomposition of organic material under controlled environments. And in essence, when those environments are not controlled and managed properly, it can lead to nuisance conditions. Odors may become prevalent if carbon to nitrogen ratios are not maintained properly. If moisture levels are not maintained properly, there might be the potential for accumulation of moisture, which may lead to the attraction of mosquitoes, perhaps other vectors. The composting operation usually includes the development of fungi material, which could have spores, creating dust spores that might have be susceptible to people with low immune systems, that sort of thing. On rare instances, there are fires associated with composting facilities if moisture is not maintained properly and temperatures do exceed recommended limits.
Yeah, in terms of the testimony that's put on by the applicant about some of the mechanized components like grinding and turning the leaves, have you seen those operations?
Yes, I have.
Is there any noise associated with those operations?
Yes, grinding machines for shredding organic material are noisy, and then trommel screens for screening the material are noisy.
Now, in your professional opinion, the claimed activities by the school district that the individual talked about, putting leaves behind the building, is that the same kind of activity and operation as the city's proposed composting?
No, it is not.
And how's it different?
The proposed composting operation is much more sophisticated. It includes a controlled environment with pre-processing of the material, large windrows with mechanized equipment for turning those windrows, and then also final processing of the compost material.
And in your opinion, should the type of operation proposed be located as near to a residential neighborhood as the city proposes here with the Edgemont? Let me make sure I'm getting that right. It's Edgemont. I know I said Edgewood before, accidentally, so let me correct that. As the Edgemont neighborhood.
In my opinion, no.
There was some testimony earlier, so I'd like to direct your attention to the zoning ordinance, the definition of municipal waste. And have the ordinance handy there.
I don't believe I have that exhibit.
Definition of municipal waste. And are you familiar with the concepts of municipal waste in certainly the engineering and DEP world?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to look at the definition of the waste facilities in here? Definition of municipal waste, and that's on page 39, exhibit 18, municipal waste.
Yes.
And would that include, in your opinion, the yard waste composting?
Objection. Qualified as engineer, not to determine whether or not it qualifies under a specific definition. Zoning officer ought to testify.
I'll sustain the objection.
Let me ask you, from a engineering perspective, does municipal waste include leaf and woody waste collected in a community activity, yard waste collection?
Yes, it does.
I'd like to, I think you have in front of you what had been marked but not admitted as Township Exhibit Number 6, which was some historic weather data. I wonder if you could take a look at that for us and tell us if you had a chance to look at it and are familiar with it.
Yes, I believe you're specifically referring to the interactive snow information.
Yes. And as a professional, do you rely upon that very type of weather data for making determinations of past weather conditions at a site?
That is correct. This would be considered reliable.
And where does that information come from?
This information comes from NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And they develop these snowfall data information based on ground level observations as well as satellite imagery.
I would at this time remove for the admission of Township Exhibit Number 6, which is the weather data for the...
Same objection. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Same objection that no information that he actually pulled this off. mean, it says what it says, but same objection, I agree with you.
How about if I ask him, actually,
You want to ask something
yeah,
further?
do you have an opinion, professional opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty based on that information, whether there would have been visible snow cover on the ground on that date in this year?
Objection. I don't know what the basis for that. It's not a
Well, it says
wetland.
there's 2 inches of snow cover on the ground. It's the NOAA information. I don't think there's anything in the world that's any more
I objected to the
precise or
question.
scientific or accurate than that.
My objection to his answering the question of whether there was snow on the ground was not qualified as a weather person.
I'm not going to admit the document. I think he testified that he relies on this sort of information, and he could say that, but not going to admit the
Okay.
document.
So help me out here, and maybe we need another hearing. I can't imagine anything in the world we could do to prove that. I mean, I think in court that would work. What would be acceptable, and I realize the, formal rules of evidence don't apply here, but other than the scientific record of there being snowfall on the ground on that date, what would be acceptable to the board that we could submit?
Objection. I'm not sure that the board is going to tell council what's acceptable to.
Or why this isn't acceptable?
If one reason it's not acceptable is we don't know who downloaded it.
I
How
downloaded it.
you downloaded
Yes.
it. Okay. We will accept it then if you're testifying that you downloaded it. In fact, Mr. Diamond, did you have something?
Mr. Diamond, did you make mention of 2 inches of snow?
Yes.
Because the maps don't indicate that.
Well, when you turn to the second page, not snowing that day, it's snow cover on the ground.
Right, okay. So prior to.
Yes, it wasn't snowing that
Snow.
day, but if you recall, this was about an aerial photo supposedly on a specific date, and our proposition was it looked like a summer photo, not a photo from that date. I mean, that's all it is. It's so simplified in the very last pages and this looks more humorous, but it's a little summary that you can print out supposedly on someone's birthday to tell you what and it will actually summarize, here was the highest temperature that day, here's how, there was no precipitation that day, there was no snowfall that day, but there was snow on the ground. But this is only about the credibility of one photo on that day.
So we will accept exhibit number 6 for admission.
I don't believe I have any further questions.
Oh, okay, I'll ask the engineer. I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
I'm sorry. All right, well, let's start with the newly admitted Township Exhibit 6. What's the title of the, on this first page here? It says modeled snow depth for 2004, February 26. It says that, correct?
Yes.
Now, what does that mean to you when you hear modeled snow depth?
That's the snow depth that was interpolated by NOAA based on the analysis that they completed from ground level observations and satellite imagery.
So do you know how they interpolate that?
Not specifically, other than they use that data.
Do you know where they took the data?
I believe it was the Harrisburg Airport.
All right. Do you know How far is it away is Harrisburg Airport from the site?
That I'm not familiar with.
Do you know any other sites within Pennsylvania that were used for the modeling?
These are specific to certain areas throughout the state.
Do you know if there are any other, do you know the next closest spot as opposed to Harrisburg Airport to this site that was used for modeling?
Not specifically.
Okay. If you look over on the right-hand side of that page, I see there's a scale of inches to depth. Do you see that?
I see that.
And you see what does it say, what's categorized as white?
Not estimated?
And what if you see green on the map, or sort of like a greenish brown, yes?
That's the general elevation.
Okay. And if you look, for instance, at the city of Lancaster, is there snow on the ground under this model?
No, there's not.
Is there snow on the ground in Carlisle?
No.
Is there snow on the ground in all of Harrisburg?
This doesn't clearly define the boundaries of Harrisburg.
Does this clearly define the boundaries of Susquehanna Township?
That I cannot tell based on the map.
So you really don't know if there was snow on the ground on this site on this day based upon this map, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Are you familiar with the township rule for the Edgemont facility? So that's on. DEP rule that was submitted by HRG?
The permit by rule?
Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Just want to make sure it's T25. That's the Township Exhibit 25. You're not familiar with that?
Other than seeing it here this evening.
Okay. Are you familiar at all with the Edgemont yard waste site?
From what I've been briefed, yes.
And I believe there's testimony that the waste sat there for about 90 days. Is that correct? The leaves.
That's what was testified, yes.
Okay. And what was happening to those leaves during those 90 days in your experience dealing with composting?
There's a potential that they were decomposing.
They were just decomposed out, correct?
Naturally, yes.
And are you aware if any odors would have been emitted from that site during that decomposition process?
I'm not aware of any odors.
Okay. Could there have been odors? I mean, if something is sitting there for 90 days, typically would there be odors coming out of a decomposing site like that?
It's possible.
Okay. You don't know.
I don't.
Sure.
I certainly don't know.
Okay. Now you testified also about the proposed site we have here that there very well could be odors associated with the site. Is that based just upon what's theoretically possible or what's shown in the Cumberland County manual, or based upon any actual knowledge of what will happen on the site?
The site has not been constructed yet, so it's based on past experience and theoretical information that what might occur with odors for these types of facilities.
Now, if the proposed site was operated by Susquehanna Township, and for the zoning officer, that would have been a permitted use go through there, would that site potentially emit odors also?
Certainly.
Would there be noise operating by trucks and vehicles to access the site as well as grinding operations?
If they were proposing the same type of equipment.
Okay. Would there be any difference in the noise or smells between that operated by Susquehanna Township or the city of Harrisburg?
No.
And the same line of questioning would go with bugs, I believe. There's a potential for mosquitoes to be there, correct?
That's correct.
And you would have the same answer that whether there's bugs there would be the same whether the City of Harrisburg was operating this or Susquehanna Township was operating it, correct?
Correct.
No further questions.
Thank you.
So I believe you were questioned and asked whether you felt that such a compost facility should be near a residential area. And you replied, no, I don't believe it should be near a residential area. How do you define near?
Just in general proximity.
What does that mean now? I mean, we're dealing with ordinances that are clear in feet and miles, and things are clearly laid out, so that we don't have to. We can be very objective. So I'm just wondering, when you say that this kind of facility should not be located near a residential area, I mean, near to me may be very different than near to you. I'm just wondering how you base that. I mean, in your mind, how far, is that a mile?
It really, I'm sorry.
Or, 500 feet? Or, I mean, how do you process that word near?
Yeah, it really depends based on atmospheric conditions and air dispersion that might occur. So I certainly haven't done any types of air dispersion modeling at this specific facility to determine whether or not odors could be of a significant impact or dust could migrate off the site, that sort of thing. But given the aerial imageries that were presented, it looks like certainly this parcel abuts residential areas, but the specific composting facility that's proposed itself is within 1,000 feet of the residential areas, which that's what I would.
Do you think that's near?
I do think that's near, yes.
Okay, so is that kind of how you would establish the definition of near, about 1,000 feet?
Yeah, generally speaking.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No further questions, Mr. Burns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Township reps.
Well, you've all been very patient these many long months, those of you in the public and from the community, and we do want to give you the opportunity now to comment and speak. Does anyone wish to be a party? And what that means is you may ask questions if you wish to be a party. There may be other responsibilities that you incur in becoming a party. If the opinion is appealed and so on, you could incur some other responsibilities, but you do have that option to become a party. Those of you who wish to be a party will ask you to testify or to comment first. And do you have those of you who wish to be parties, you've filled out the cards, all of you?
Every single time we show, I say that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, you say other responsibilities. Do that include financial responsibilities?
Not necessarily, but you would be copied on all of the decisions, opinions, and so on.
Yeah, it would give you the right also to file an appeal, and to ask questions and to participate in that appeal.
And of course, if you wish to file an appeal, that would be your responsibility, and that could involve financial costs. All right, I'm going to take these in alphabetical order then. Jamie Folks.
I just wanted to reserve my right to speak. I don't want to speak at this time,
Okay.
but I would like to be a party to
And you are Patricia Thompson?
Jamie Folks.
Oh, you're Jamie, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to be, if they're interested in comments, I have no issues, they can do that. We did do party status for some individual already. We've taken care of that, so if she wants to become a party, we should ask questions to determine who she is.
Great.
Yes.
So let's 2 blocks away from the site.
Well, she,
We'll have her come on up and she'll go in.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you spell your last name for me?
F as in Frank, O-L-K, S as in Sam.
I'll just ask, could you give your address, please?
1903 Clayton Avenue. My property abuts this property.
So I just want to make sure. Let me show you that. Here's the site. So you're flooding it?
Yes.
Okay, I have no objection then.
okay, thank you. Well, would you like to go forward now? Or were you saying you did not have any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Willie Harmon,
Yes, ma'am.
would you come forward?
I already filled out those cards. This is fifth time.
And would you be sworn in, please?
Sure,
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. And we've established that I live across the street from the site, so I don't think there's a...
No, you're a party.
Okay, I'm just... Okay, this is public comment section now, right? I'm
Yes.
not addressing witnesses at all?
We were going to hold the public comment till the end. We wanted to just get a record clear right now of who was going to be party status.
Oh, okay.
And there'll be time for public comment at the end.
Okay, that's why
We
that's why I
understand
asked.
it's been a long couple months. And
No, that's why I asked, because I actually have questions and I got statements and...
All right, thank you again, Mr. Harmon. Patricia Thompson.
That would be me. Because I have much to say. I live across the street from Jamie. 1910 Clayton Avenue.
And would you be sworn in, please?
Certainly.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I have to.
Again, your address,
1910 Clayton Avenue.
so you are in this area here?
Yep.
So you're less than a quarter mile from the site?
I would say.
Okay, I have no objections to her as party status.
You don't want to hear all this stuff yet, do you? Okay. It's too bad.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Jan Folks.
I have to. I think my property's like, if that's to scale an inch outside of their line, I do have a question how they can determine standings if I live in a township.
If you could come forward so we can hear you.
Can you spell your name?
It's Jayon. Last name is Folks. F as in Franco, L-K-S.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I think we already had it in as a... Correct.
Yeah, so you're here for comment? Comment would be later, but I just had a question on standing if I live in the township, and based off of where they just placed their map, if it was a half an inch to the right, I'd be able to speak. So I'm just wondering how they determine someone to have standing or not based off of a Google Earth map. Considering his comments near to someone else is different. Near is near to me because of my family. My sister-in-law and my brother, I'm at their house all the time, so I'm an environmental guy. I know how groundwater works, how air works, so near to me is near to me. So I just wonder how they get that. You did a Google Earth image. That's just not.
Sir, you're right. Whether you have standing is a subjective determination as to the lines that they have drawn there. And we have already decided that you did not have standing. You certainly may continue with comments, but we do not believe, we agree that you do not have standing.
If I may say, this map is different. This is my property right here on the corner of Wilkes Lane and Glen. So my property is actually within this 0.75 miles. That's 2,500 Locust Lane. So is that enough room to give me standing?
No, I don't believe that the map is indicative of standing. The circle on the map is not.
This is what you based it off last time.
There's a measurement. Yes. That wasn't the only thing correct.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, as we said, it's, there isn't a clear definitive thing that, if you live within 100 feet or 500 feet, and that's why we were trying to get some general understanding with this witness too. But you may certainly comment.
I'll comment at comment time. I just want to address that last time when his image was on the screen.
Yes.
He based it off of the screenshot of the image. My property was just outside of that image. That's why I could not speak. My property is in this image. So I just would ask for some consistency when you're dealing with the lives of people. Well, I'll say
did you say your relative was granted party status? You could be called as a witness if you'd like to be.
I can be? Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to be a party?
Question to the solicitor. I don't live within that area. I live in the township, but I own property at 1212 North 21st Street. And I'm very concerned about that because it affects me. Do you have standing if I own property at 1212 within that area?
I'd have to look at the proximity. I'm not directly familiar with the
I do
proximity.
live in there. I mean, I have a vested interest.
Right, would you like to come over and we'll...
Stan Lawson, LAWSON. The property owner is 1212 North 21st Street.
We're on the map, it's 21st Street.
That's right. Right here.
So you're about
Here, right here.
It's about a third of a mile from there.
I'm right here.
I would have no objection to him having seen it. I own a piece across the road.
Okay. Thank you, Stanley. Marilyn Pham.
Okay, I'm confused
confused. Are we talking about standing at this point or making comments? Which is it?
Standing,
Not comments?
not comments right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I apologize if some of you have been up a second time. We're just going through all the cards right now. We want to make sure we don't miss anyone. We want to make sure that everybody has their opportunity. So we apologize that this isn't exactly clear. We just want to make sure that everybody, has their chance and that we get to address these issues openly. Yes, Ms.
May I
Fox.
ask a question?
Yes.
My son was not able to be here tonight because of a work obligation, and I believe that he has maybe the biggest standing out of everyone because his is the house right on the edge of the cemetery. Is this the only opportunity for him to claim standing?
No. We have another person to do it again.
Yes, I'm afraid it is the only opportunity for him.
And he would need to be here in order to do that?
Yes, he would.
Okay, thank you.
If he postponed,
If he called in, would that be acceptable?
Council. Go off the record for a moment.
To further my question, so that I don't push this and it's not necessary, if I'm getting notification of everything and I'm his mother, does he gain anything from being having standing if I'm going to pass everything along to him?
The rights are vested with you, but you have the right to file an appeal and participate in an appeal.
But he would not.
you do it on behalf of the kids.
That's correct.
Correct.
But then I would be able to.
You would have full standing.
So the question as to him calling in is that.
Well, I would have to see if we've never done that before, and the parties I don't know how they feel about it either.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. And to the extent that you preserve your party status, you can call all of them as witnesses. They could participate through you in that respect. They just wouldn't receive independent notifications. If you decided not to assert your rights, they wouldn't be able to assert their rights independent of views. How that would work.
All right. Thank you.
I would actually, and it's horrible because I don't know if you guys use Robert's Rules of Order or how you're conducting this, but clarification do need to be made on standing. A set distance, as Ms. Carnes spelled out clearly in her question, has to be defined so that these good people who've been coming out here can establish without a plausible excuse whether or not they would have standing or could have standing. I have it because I know I'm adjacent to the property. But what about my next door neighbor who's semi-adjacent, or her next door neighbor who's slightly off of it? These are questions that are going through these people's minds, and it's all because there's no establishment of standing. Are we going to use, he has marked out to 3/4 of a mile, or 0.075 of a mile. Are we going to use that as the outer barrier if you live within 3/4 of a mile of this site that you have standing? Or are we going to say that, well, let's pick. He looks like a guy who won't do anything, so he's close enough, and he might not. So, we need that standing. That's defined by distance.
It is, and it's not a. Pardon me.
And for clarification, what is that distance?
There is no specific distance.
Then it's not defined.
The person must be affected. That is the definition.
We're all affected.
As a township resident,
Township residency does not give you standing.
as a township resident, you have a concern because what happens out here on Lingostown Road affects me. Although I'm not next door neighbors to Lingostown Road. Okay, it affects me because this is part of my community. Okay, so saying that where you live is going to be the basis of whether or not you can have standing is not a answer.
And we have, pardon me, sir, we have set out some criteria on the back of the card. And as the distance between the individual seeking party status and the subject property increases, standing becomes less certain. So if you live here on Lingelstown Road, even though you may be affected by everything that goes on in the township, you would not be directly affected by what is going on at the site that we are addressing here. And that has already been established, so we're going to move on
no one
from
in this
that
room
now.
lives more than a mile away from me, and I live next door to the project. Okay, I'm sure when I set off an illegal firework, they can hear it.
That isn't what we're speaking of here, though.
It's one of the possibilities that could happen. I mean,
Okay, sir, I am going to move on. Edward Salvi, please.
Could you spell your name? Could you spell your name?
Spell your name.
If you would spell your name, ma'am.
Okay.
Spell your name.
Netta, N-E-T-T-A, Ware, W-A-R-E.
Oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. I was looking for Edward Salvi. Maybe he isn't here.
And I live at 2018 Wayne Avenue, Harrisburg City, been here for years.
We can do her, okay,
Yeah.
just hold.
she lives next door to me.
Just, please.
This is what
This is just marked out here, so 22nd Street.
Wayne Avenue where?
I have no objection standing. She's, I believe you're adjacent to the property. Okay?
Ma'am, I do need you to pick up a card, ma'am.
And where?
She did put a card up there. It's a card, I gave it to her.
And what is her name?
Netta Ware.
She spelled it everything.
W-A-R-E.
There's a card,
Maybe she does it in her hand.
but she didn't, I gave it to her. She has. Just the
Well, I apologize. I do have it, just the party status wasn't selected at the bottom, so I sorted them that way. I apologize, ma'am.
All right. Anyone else wishing to be a party? Ma'am, we've already spoken with you. All right. We're going to move on to public comment then.
I got one.
All right, we're finally ready for public comment, and I would ask you all to please limit your comments for 3 to 5 minutes. Most of you have been very patient and have much to say, I know. But may we have Gina Chiloro? Chiloro from Great Oak Lane. She may not be here. Some folks filled out cards earlier from other hearings.
She was here another meeting for me because I had her give her comments to speak on my behalf when I wasn't at the.
Long time ago.
Oh, Representative, would you like to speak, Representative?
Yes.
I will, yeah.
Yes.
Now?
Yes.
Could you spell your name?
Yeah, Sue Helm, AGLM. And I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Sorry,
Is it
are we
on?
doing comment now? or-
This is comment.
Oh, comment, okay.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Yes, you have to be very close to it.
All right, well, thank you for giving the opportunity to speak tonight. I've been to most every meeting except two, which I had somebody come in my place and reported back to me what happened. But I am here because, as you look around this room, I'm here to represent the residents of the Edgemont community because they have a lot of concerns. They have concerns about health, about traffic, the volume, the noise, and safety concerns. Property values, they're very concerned about their property values going down. And as the author of the bill to sell the state hospital grounds, I have a concern too, because we're getting closer and closer where we're going to be selling those grounds, and I really don't want a compost facility close by. I don't think it's the highest and best use for this property. And just simply put, the people of the community of Edgemont do not want this. I think they've shown their concern by attending all these meetings, and I hope that you will listen to them, listen to me, and not grant this exception. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Representative. Annette Branch.
Annette, A-N-N-E-T-T-E. Last name is B as in boy, R-A-N-C-H-E, pronounced Branch. I live at 3005 North 6th Street in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 17110. The lady that spoke before me, Miss Netta Ware, is my aunt. She's living in the home in which I was raised on Wayne Avenue. And when she asked me to come in her behalf, I was happy to do so. Not that I was granted Troublemaker, Hellraiser of the Year, 1997 by Mother Jones Magazine, but I do like to at least have the facts as we're receiving today. I recall a testimony from two nurses that said that they were quite ill and had a fatal lung disease because of breathing in minute particles from the incinerator, but I understand we're speaking primarily at this time about a compost operation. But then I heard earlier that there may be introduced at a later time the possibility of restaurant waste or garbage. And then I'm understanding when they explain how, if that's the fact, that rodents, flies, mosquitoes, and other health problems develop because of the raking and the so forth. I believe that was the second or the third meeting of how this was to possibly be uncovered. So I'm still a little concerned as to, is it going to be, or the possibility of only a compost heap, or are we looking at the possibility of a 42-acre refinery? So I'm sitting here taking it all in, not certain of what, where, and how, because I went online and the persons that appear to be operating that facility wore hazmat covering with the mask and the gloves and the full uniform they had on. But I'm going back to what I discovered as a young girl back in 1944 when Edgemont was a quite humble little town where we had very few people had indoor electricity or plumbing. There were a number of gardens and outhouses, so to speak. We did not have city water, electricity, or bus service. There were not asphalt roads at that time. Now I see a full-fledged, well-developed, beautiful suburban community. And I think most of the people here that are here for the sole purpose, they would like for it to remain that way. And many of them are quite concerned that the value of their property will decrease if this is developed. I personally have a compost heap in my backyard with twigs and leaves that you rake from your lawn. But there seemed to be some kind of ambiguity as to, will it remain that, or is this just another way of getting your foot in the door and you find yourself with other problems? So I'm here just to gather information. That's how things are done hear all the facts, weigh them, evaluate them the best you can. But I do understand the veteran that stood at this very microphone and said how he was in mourning. I am too. I know what it's like to work hard, have a home, have your area looking as nicely as you can, only to have unprepared for what might come or what is at hand, and find yourself dealing with a situation that's full of surprises and possibly disappointments. I do understand that. I do understand what it's like when you have to more or less stand your ground, hope for the best, and trust. And I thank God for Ms. Sue Helms. I thank God for those that are here tonight. And I'm a product of this community, although I live in Harrisburg, but my heart is still here in Edgemont. I pray that you do the right thing.
Thank you. Wilhelmina Murray.
Could you spell your name?
WILHELMENIA, Murray, M-U-R-R-Y. I stand to request that the zoning board deny the request of the city for the exemption to the zoning ordinance. As I understand it, the zoning ordinances are meant to protect and to promote the welfare of the citizens of Susquehanna Township. And this does not promote or protect the welfare of the citizens of the 3rd Ward, Edgemont, or the township. I sympathize with Harrisburg's dilemma in terms of what to do with their yard waste, but I don't think their solution should come at our expense. We spent a lot of time over the Edgemont that you see now is not the Edgemont that existed 40, 50 years ago. And that's because citizens have fought to better the community in which they live, and we fought developers who wanted to put in substandard housing. We fought the township to get water and sewage out in Edgemont. We've resisted developers coming in trying to do rental apartments when we feel that single-family dwellings are in the best interest of the community. And all you have to do is drive through Edgemont to see what it looks like now, and then look at some of the older pictures. So I think I would like to see you deny their request, and that you would protect our best interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanley Lawson.
Good evening. I just want to make a statement. Number one, the book of Romans tells me in the Bible to respect leadership. And I do respect leadership. I respect you as commissioners, the mayor, and all of you. But I was very offended by you, Mayor, when you said that, if anyone else want to put this compost powder, anyone other than the city of Harrisburg would be
So,
all right.
Mr. Lawson, I'm sorry. I need you to direct your comments to the board.
Look, I don't have to look at you to direct it. I'm directing it to you, even though I'm looking the other way. I'm directing it.
Well, do not address the
I'm saying to
mayor.
you,
You can talk to me about the mayor.
I'm
but
saying
do not
I'm very
address the mayor.
offended to think that anyone else would want to put a compost powder other than Harrisburg would be acceptable. That's a damn lie. Anybody that wants to put a compost pile near Edgemont, Stilton, New York City, anywhere, it'd be wrong. It's the wrong place. It's not zoned for it. It's not. We don't need it. It will definitely affect property values. Definitely. And so when people work all their lives building a home, and that's we're not wealthy people in Edgemont. That's our biggest investment, our homes. And so it's quite frankly, It's not wanted, not needed, and it's not zoned for it. Bless you.
Thank you. Tricia Thompson.
First, I'd like to direct this to the board. As an elected board, it appears to me personally that you continue to give the mayor of the city of Harrisburg more room to make changes to his continued flawed request. It seems like it just doesn't matter what the affected community has to say. This is personal. This proposal is really detrimental to our health and well-being. And we really ask that you, once and for all, deny the mayor's request to put this compost facility in our neighborhood. I want to give you some history. My family has lived in Edgemont since 1961. At that time, the community was probably 98% black. Our children attended Glenwood Elementary School. The principal, majority of the faculty, and the students were black. Then came integration. Susquehanna Township officials followed the law and integrated the elementary schools. How did they integrate them? They bused our black children to white neighborhoods. That's how the integration was done. To go a step further, they turned our elementary school into a kindergarten center. Well, let me tell you, the white parents in Susquehanna Township raised so much cane about their children being bused into a black neighborhood that within 2 years or more, they closed that school and sold it. And then even our kindergarten children, black children, were bused into white neighborhoods. Time passed. Township approved the building of a city school in the same area that the compost facility is proposed. We fought hardly about that. But the board, it was all to no avail. Our fight was to no avail. The board approved the request of the city, and we in Edgemont suffered the consequences. From that decision, we got vandals. Students skipped school, came down across Wayne Avenue, and vandalized properties. My husband came home from work one day and there were kids under our carport just stealing stuff, just because they could. Prior to that time, we didn't even lock our doors. It was that kind of community. But that changed our lives forever. And that was a decision, again, that the board made to give the city that opportunity to build that school, which didn't work. Schools closed, and now...
Wait, pardon me.
Turn the volume down or off.
The phone needs to be removed.
At any rate, that was something that changed our lives forever. And now we're fighting this bigger problem. And as I said, we believe that this proposal is detrimental to our health and well-being. We ask that you really, we pray that you will deny this request. Why can't they use the facility that the township uses?
Thank you for your...
Can you spell your name for me?
Patricia, Patricia, Thompson, Thompson.
Thank you for your comments, and I would only say one thing, and that is we members of the board are appointed. We're not elected.
You're not elected, you're
No.
appointed.
The zoning hearing board, that's
We're
right.
volunteers.
Okay, I think I should change my job.
Thank you.
All right.
Jayon Folks.
Hello. Just thanks again for the opportunity to speak. And I would just ask that you do the right thing here. I think these gentlemen have come in ample times and they haven't been prepared. The school district and city has been doing things that appears to be illegally over the years. No concern of anyone's health or welfare. So they're comparing a holding area in our community to a full-fledged composting facility. It's different, so please don't buy into that. Don't buy into the language. I think it's all smoke and mirrors. So I would just ask that you decide against it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie Folks.
Jamie. As a resident right adjacent to the property, I have a concern for all of the reasons. Sorry. I have a concern for all of the same reasons that my fellow community members have brought up. Wilhelmina brought up the point about promoting what's best for us. And I don't believe that this facility promotes what's best for our environment, for our community, for our children, for our homes, for anything. My husband and I live adjacent to the property, and my husband walks that property at different times. And we personally have witnessed, I'm not sure if they were city trucks or school district trucks, which we have photos of, which we provided to the township at the time, illegally dumping in that property back behind where no one can see. And that is not the only time that it has occurred. To me, that indicates that there's no care, there is no consideration, and I don't see how that it's going to be any different with approving a facility maybe on the front. It will follow the rules, but all these years it's not had a care. They have not had a care or a concern for us. I don't see that this is going to change that. You speak of trust all through this process. I don't believe that there has been any trust instilled in us based on what we've heard, how we've been treated, how we've been portrayed in the media. There's no care or concern or trust there. I don't know that if I'm saying my points very clearly. I just ask that you deny this. It is not acceptable in our township guidelines. So we ask that you rule against the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Willie Harmon.
Hello again. I'm going to thank everybody for coming out. And I'm going to do my best to keep this under 5 minutes. I'm going to touch on a lot of different subjects. And I'm going to do it as quickly as I possibly can. I'm the guy who takes care of the dang property in the absence of anybody else doing it. I plant the flowers, I cut the grass, and if anybody don't like it, my time and my equipment, you can gladly reimburse me for, and I'll stop. But as long as I've got to look at it, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to do it. Okay, I believe some of our founding fathers called that willful misconduct or something like that, where they broke the law knowingly, and that's what I do. But in doing so, I know about the wildlife that's over there. And I bet you none of our engineers or planners or people who come over there know that there are bees, which, hey, one of those protected pollinator things that's going to be wiped out or at least impacted by this. There's monarch butterflies. And I'm not talking about, oh, there's one there. I'm talking like you can go out on a given day right around now and see 5 or 6 of them flurrying all around the fields that they want to put their compost facility in. They travel all the way to South America where they spend the rest of their life after being born and bred here. And we're going to just take that away. They're already an endangered species or threatened. I'm getting to get clarification because I've been doing the research to find out, since I have to present information before you guys. This is what I'm looking at, because I'm actually doing the research to get it. But it sounds like I better get an engineer, because this guy's going to tell me that all of my research was bullcrap. That's why I'm trying to get the people who actually speak on this and know better than me to be my testify for me. And I can go on. Not just those 2 insects. There's amphibians that I see. Yes, all the way down to the little salamanders. I'm over in that field that much. If anyone remember the 70s, and I know a lot of us are old enough too, there used to be the Indian that did the about litter, and it became a big thing that they're Native American, if anyone was offended by that. But over in that field, there's litter. The litter was dropped off by this Harrisburg City Schools. I unfortunately had to come directly from work here today, so I couldn't even stop by to bring the samples of the green hard plastic and the black landscaping cloth that was dumped out there with the pictures that Jamie has, which was done by the Harrisburg City Schools, I'll admit. I know because when they were doing it, I went out into the field and stopped them. They were in dump trucks, and I could hear them from my house, right at about 500 feet away. Speaking of what I can hear from my house at, say, 5 o'clock at night, rush hour, right? I can hear any police siren that goes across her street down the bypass. I can hear them on State Street, and I only noticed because I confirmed it one day when someone I was talking to was up on State Street, and I heard the police, Harrisburg City Police, no offense to Harrisburg, they have to answer their calls. But I'm over a mile away from there, and I heard it clear as day. When large trucks, Class A CDL holder here, I drive them.
Mr. Harmon, one more minute.
Yes, ma'am. I can hear them from the highways. I can hear the trains down at the train stations, which is behind farms. Noise is going to be a problem with me. Okay, and I can deal with noise. The dust. I have asthma. If a mushroom bloom happens, it's going to affect me because the wind blows from across the field into my house. I know this. I stand outside. I know it. I feel it. So there's a health concern. Besides that, at 50 years old, I'm one of the youngest residents on my street until 2 neighbors moved in, one being the folks and another neighbor up the street. Everyone else is older than I am. They're not going to be able to handle that kind of dust and from this type of an operation if it becomes a problem. And we can't play with ifs. The city had a incinerator at one point, and if they would have taken care of it, the city might still have their incinerator. It was a...
Mr. Harmon, thank you. Your time is up.
3 seconds. It was a waste refuge center. This is another refuge center of waste, yard waste. We cannot allow this in our neighborhood. If they want to put it in their backyard, fine and dandy, in their yard, not in ours.
Thank you, sir. Netta Ware. Sounds like a song title.
I want to say that I have been living out here in Susquehanna Township for a number of years. All 5 of my children started at Carter Drive up there. All 5 of them are military. All 5 of them went to school here, graduated, have good records. I can show you in writing about them. And I love out here, and I want to stay out here, and what have you. And so I don't know, they just love sports. They were involved in all kinds of sports, about all 5 of my children, and they're doing fine. And the neighborhood where I live is very nice, the pumping station down there. And the guys come up, they'll talk to me and whatnot like that. I can get along with anybody. And I love where I live. And I don't want this dumping stuff out there. I have enough problem, and I don't need that. So I'm asking you, please, let it go. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that we've missed? Oh, would you like to comment, ma'am?
Could you spell your name?
Marilyn, Marilyn, Pham, and I just want to comment. I want to thank Mrs. Ware, who's 90 years old, who has been my neighbor ever since I moved in the community, that I appreciate her coming out and spending all this time listening to all of these comments and concerns. I have, I guess, a comment and question thing together. Mine is in reference to the application that was submitted by Attorney Shore for the option E, and I'm making reference to on the application under Part B, required attachment to application, Section F, and it reads, if you don't have it in front of you, such other features of subject to real estate, e.g., for example, elevational, topographical irregularities that would be particularly relevant to determination of the case. And I do have a long history in this area, as I once taught in the middle school that was standing there for many, many years. And my family just recently sold their property to folks who now live adjacent to the property, and I also lived on Wayne Avenue. So I'm going to go back to the early 70s when my family first moved into the Edgemount communities, and I recall this. At that time, as you heard many people testify, there was no water and hookup or electrical in a lot of homes. And most people received well water at that time. And as you know, I heard testimony about the eastern side of the Harrisburg East Cemetery would be an area that would be adjacent to this composting facility. And at that time, when we moved out there, the Harrisburg East Cemetery was polluting our well water. It was polluting it by some of the formaldehyde or whatever other chemicals that were used in encasing and embalming bodies was leaching into the groundwater. And it leached into the groundwater, and people were getting well water at that time. And it was deemed that that well water was not, you couldn't drink it, it was polluted, and we had to get bottled water up until we had to actually hook onto the line. And one of the processes that I heard was about this facility is that they have to use a large amount of water. And if that's the case, if you're going to lose a large amount of water, 20 gallons of water for every cubic yard of leaves, this seems to me that that water is going to be leaching into the soil. And I know that they are required by permit to indicate how that water would be contained, what's going to happen with this water once it gets into the ground, where is it going, who is going to be ultimately affected by that wastewater. And I also need clarity on a definition of what is the water. What are we talking about? Compost wastewater, groundwater discharge, processed water, storm water, surface water discharge, yard clippings. See, you just can't say we're just going to dump water on some leaves and then it's going to take care of itself, because these leaves are pre-treated, the grass clippings are pre-treated, they come there already with chemicals, and these chemicals will get into the groundwater. Therefore, there needs to be something in place where this is going to be monitored. And speaking of monitoring, when we first spoke to the DEP liaison, I'll call him, I know his first name was Anthony. We asked about how it was going to be monitored, and if there were violations, how were these violations going to be dealt with? And we had kind of it was an answer by that if there are violations, it could take 3 months, 6 months, and who's going to monitor? Who's going to know when things are not running smoothly? How will we know that this groundwater is contaminated? As I said, I don't know what you're calling it, what term you're using here. I need clarification on that. Like I said, I won't repeat it, but I made a list here. This was from exhibit number 13. I'm concerned about that. And I don't think I have anything else to say other than I agree with my neighbors that it's not helpful in any way, because we already heard testimony that no one in the community is going to benefit from it. No one in the community, will be receiving any mulch or anything to that effect. And also, when we did meet with the city before, they do have other options. I haven't heard any of the other options other than, yeah, we do. There's other places that they can compost. And they had a study that was done by Widener that suggested what they could do with another site to be used. So they do have other options. I haven't heard those other options other than there was 11, but I didn't hear anyone actually get into the real details about who, what, the where, or how they're would be utilized. I think that's all I need to say. Okay?
Thank you. Is there anyone else that we...
Oh, just one more thing. You need to look at the principles of environmental justice. One of the principles of environmental justice is that individuals involved should be partnered with, and decision-making a part of that. And I didn't hear anything about that other than you don't have standing, but I think we need justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Well, give your name before you do the community comment?
You would like to comment?
Yeah.
You may. Have you filled out a card?
No, I did not. Sorry.
Would just come to the mic.
Good evening. First name is Cynthia, C-Y-N-T-H-I-A. Last name is Ellis, E-L-L-I-S. Hi. The reason I'm standing in front of you, I heard about Harrisburg, Susquehanna. I'm trying to merge both. I'm concerned about our kids in the community. We're talking about trucks early 6 o'clock in the morning starting, and from previous meeting, they say they will go the route of 17th Street. 17th Street have cars parked on both sides. Trucks are big. We have young kids walking to school. We have a school at 17th and State that's not a part of Harrisburg School District. It's kind of like a private charter school. Parents are dropping off students. With these trucks, would they have GPS saying how fast they're going? Are they going under the speed limit? Or are they going over the speed limit? Kids always have the time from time docked in front of cars, trucks, or buses, whatever. I'm worried about the safety of all. If you travel that street early in the morning, say 7:30, 8 o'clock, people are trying to go to work, people are trying to go to school, and people are sometimes in a hurry when they don't need to be in a hurry. So that's when I say I'm merging both communities. I'm thinking about the kids of the future that's not going to change that corridor. And we're gonna have trucks, 25, I heard as a minimum, traveling that route in Hurst Street. Hurst Street got enough traffic with people trying to get out of the town, as well as getting into the town. And as you can look at the city of Harrisburg, and I heard this on national news, State Street here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, made the national news because of people on that corridor being hit by cars every year after year. And they're trying to do something, I think, in the city right now to change that. So my concern is not the fight against what should happen towards our compost. I'm concerned, because I live on Clayton Avenue, but I'm more concerned about our future, our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the community who has shown up for these hearings. It is very good to hear from you all and to see your dedication to your community and to our township. Right now, we're going to take a break, and we are going to take care of some housekeeping matters. But what I expect is that it'll just be housekeeping from here on, and we may set another time to come back for our final decision. So we're going to take a 10-minute break right now. We're back in session. We are going to continue this hearing until Wednesday, September 4th, which is the usual date of the zoning hearing board. And we'll be meeting here at the same place at the township. And the time will continue to be 6 o'clock. We will not be hearing any further testimony. Each party has concluded their case, and they will just be giving their final arguments. So we are adjourned until September 4th.
Thank you.